Scott, man, what a great privilege to be able to, like, I think the favorite thing about like being a guy, right, is just like sitting around, like shooting the breeze and talking about life and kind of catching up. I can't wait to be one of those. I mean, I'm already kind of old, I guess, with an AARP card, right? But like my dad for like 20 years had breakfast once a week with the same group of guys. They actually called it the old man's club, right? They did nothing but like eat pancakes and just shoot the breeze. And like when you like that's one of the best parts of being a guy. And so I've enjoyed our conversation off camera to this point, and I can't wait to get into what we're about to talk about today. That will encourage some other guys, especially to get connected, like with Dads on Tap, and to find a community that they can actually do some life with. Like I think that's the best, man. Oh, let's go. Bro, my daughter graduated from college in 2020. So if you were to put a finger on a map, since you know the area, I'm about 6 miles from Laguna Beach, right? Inland from Laguna Beach, right? Horrible suffering for the Lord here. Um, and my daughter actually like put a finger on the map and said, "What's the absolute furthest that I could go?" And she ended up on in like outside of Salem, Massachusetts, at Gordon College, right? And so she was on the coast, right? The like beautiful part of area, but like as far as you could get across the country. And I remember dropping her off. In fact, in May, she just in February she moved across country again to pursue her dream of being an artist. So she now lives in Brooklyn, and my wife and I over Mother's Day went to go back and to see and to get to see her. And so it's a fun season. And man, for all these dads, um, I was. This sounds crazy. You're on a little trip with your wife when you say, "I was in the Pottery Barn," right? Like, right? But we saw our kids were probably 3 and 5, and we saw this frazzled mom walking through Pottery Barn in San Luis Obispo with a baby, and the baby was kind of fussy, and she just looked wore out, like she was just walking dead. And I stopped her and I just said, "Hey, man, it gets better. It gets easier. Hang in there." And she kind of forced a little smile and then said something that probably most of our readers had heard, but I'd never heard it at that point. She said, "Yeah, they tell me that when you have little kids, the days are long, but the years are short." And as somebody who's kind of docked that boat a little bit and has adult kids, man, I would go back to having 8 year olds and 13 year olds and 5 year olds all day long. And so I just want to tell you, for those dads that feel like this is a struggle, um, bro, it doesn't get better than this. It doesn't get better than soccer practice and like school meetings and reading to your kids and watching movies. And man, this is the best time of your life. So hang in there. Absolutely. Sure. I'm in an interesting place right now because coming up here in about 6 weeks, I'll have had the 30-year anniversary of my dad's passing. And my dad was a pretty great dad. He grew up in a generation where his dad, my great grandfather, was a sharecropper and a itinerant Methodist preacher all through Missouri and stuff like that. And because that's what he was, none of his kids wanted anything to do with church or Christianity. So my grandfather was a World War II vet who experienced Iwo Jima and the Pacific Theater. When he came home, his job was just to try to survive every single day. Got a blue collar job at the Arsenal. My dad grew up with athletics being kind of his big outlet. In fact, I can't even tell you how many times I heard about Rocco Carbone, who was his high school football coach, that would have him over for dinner. And he was played college football for a freshman year and was delivering Pepsi over one summer there, overlooking the Mississippi River and the Quad Cities, and said it is 95 degrees and 90% humidity today. And in 6 months, that mile wide river right there is going to be so frozen that you got to drive a tractor, that you could drive a trailer over it. I got to get out of here. And he went that day and enlisted in the Army, Navy, and Marines. And the Army called him first. So he went to the Army, was stationed in Fort Bliss, Texas. And crazy thing was that there was a guy who was from his hometown who actually used to date my Aunt Judy, his sister. And he was a believer. And through that encounter, my dad found Christ. And then my dad would describe his life as just saying, I just tried to do whatever God asked me to do next. So he graduated from Bible college, spent some time. I was born actually in Vancouver, Canada, while they were serving in ministry up there, came home, pastored a church in the Central Coast of California, and then was actually the president of the college that I graduated from. And for my brother and I had a brother who was 18 months apart. And my dad had little mottos, right? Brothers stick together. We heard that our entire life, which shaped our family culture. I have a sister who's 6 years younger than me. She's great. All of us are still following the Lord. In fact, my dad was asked, aren't you proud of your kids? You got a son who's a pastor. My brother's in the entertainment industry. He's a music producer for television and films. My sister and her husband, they pastor and lead a church. And they were like, aren't you proud of your kids? And my dad said, well, I am. He goes, but I raised them to be this way. What I'm most proud of is that they are raising their kids, my grandchildren, in that way. And that's the kind of legacy that I want to be able to have as well. So I'm grateful for my dad, and for the, with some distance, right? You get to see how God used that. So I'm very grateful, because I know that so many men have not had that kind of positive experience. And it's one of the reasons why I think communities of dads are so important as we begin to kind of heal each other, right? Yep. Nope. Nope. For sure. Yeah, my wife, Jamie, this November will be married 32 years. She's done a great job raising me. Uh, it's kind of funny. She only came from a culture of all sisters, from a single. Her mom was an only child, and her grandmother was an only child. So her idea of how to connect with, and her dad was a great man. Loved my father-in-law. He too. In fact, next week will be passing 4 years ago. But uh, she didn't understand guys at all. In fact, even just like 3 weeks ago, we had this big conversation, and I looked her straight in the eye and go, "You do not speak man. You only speak woman." Right? It's a whole different, right? But man, we have been journeying together, loving each other. Man, I love her and I value her and appreciate her more today than I did on the day when I said I do. She's gifted talent. She's a television producer, and she works part time. But really, her favorite thing is to be a mom to our son, Justin. You met our daughter, Jordan. She's 26. As I said, she's living in Brooklyn. Like so many millennials, she's got 87 hustles trying to make ends meet while she pursues her dreams of a career. She's involved in a great church in Brooklyn, a very culturally different location than what she would be accustomed to in South Orange County. But it's awesome. She serves at her church. My son is a youth pastor up in Santa Cruz, and he's just experienced his 2-year anniversary to amazing young lady. So he's wrapping up this will be his 6th school year as a student ministries pastor. Kid never went to college. Just kind of pursued some dreams and things that God had on his heart. And I'm super proud of the man that he's become and the things that he has overcome in his life. And I'm so grateful to the Lord that I didn't mess him up too bad. So, yeah, man, I love those guys. And my favorite, that's my, like down later, you say like, what's one of your favorite things? I just want to hang out with my family. And I don't want them to come to me. Like, I want to be with them on their turf and try to find out wherever I can fit and wherever I can serve. That's my life's goal for the rest of my life. So, for sure. Well, as a pastor, we're always dealing with situations and circumstances and that come up in people's lives. And I had been involved in helping to bring some health, and long before we had these terminologies like mental health and some of these other kind of things that have kind of taken on in the last 4 or 5 years. Before, men were always struggling, and a lot of it just had to do. There's terms that were coined back in the 80s and the 90s as it related to men's issues that talk about wounds that men carry. And as I was dealing with this, I saw that one of the biggest things that started to take place was guys didn't know how to deal with their internal man, and they need to find a way to be able to process those kinds of things impacted their ability to be the kind of father and man that they wanted to be. So one of the things that we started to do with Dad Academy, I actually waited until my kids were graduated from high school and highly functional before I could consider myself any kind of expert or coach. But to help guys really deal with some of the issues and help them, I developed this thing called Dad Academy. And I really think that dads function best when they know what's expected of them and they have a plan to accomplish it, right? What do we do in life as a guy that doesn't have a plan, right? If you're on a diet, you have a plan. If you have a workout schedule, you have a plan. If you have financial goals, you have a plan. If you own a business, you have a plan. And dad's the only thing we do without a plan, right? There's no training to be a dad. When I started church, I went to work for Starbucks and was a manager of one of their stores, right? Good way to meet people in the community. They made me go to 40 hours of training before I could hit before I could punch the button, right? That said brew coffee. 40 hours of training. And on March 1st, 1996, they handed me a baby. So like being a dad's the only thing that we do at best responsively, at worst reactively. what could we do if we could help dads? If we could, so I took my training. My graduate degrees are in strategic and organizational leadership. So I just helped guys essentially figure out how to help men. Dad Academy helps guys write a business plan for being a dad. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, I think that uh, I'm a big reader, and one of the biggest things that shaped me back in the day was Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, right? An oldie, but still a goodie. Like that's a classic that should be on everybody's reading list. And one of the primary principles is to begin with the end in mind, right? And so if you understand the mission of being a dad, what's the end outcome? Man, I want to raise healthy adults who contribute to their community, right? Who speak life and who bring value to their relationships. So if that's the end in mind, right, then every step along the way has to do that. But I also think that part of it is understanding not that we're partnering with God's mission. Um, that He trusted us enough to actually entrust lives to us. And so He is like, He's given us a wonderful privilege and responsibility in the shaping and the development of people that He has created. Holy cow. Hold on. We might have to mute here because my guy, can you hear that? The guy's going on. I'm in my office and they're trimming my bushes. Yeah. So that's it. So the mission of a dad is to understand that that's your greatest purpose. Your success in life is going to be measured by the kind of kids that you raise. And so we need to understand that that's really how we're going to be remembered. So for sure. Well, I'll go back and clarify the mission real quick, and then we'll touch on that because a dad's mission is to pass on his values and his skills to his children. Okay, right. So you got to pass on your mission and your values and your skills to your kids. So every stage in life that there is information that we have to do, right? The whole journey of being a parent is you're developing courage in the life of your kids, how to live from the heart, how to trust information and how to trust yourself, how to learn how to make decisions. And that starts from the very beginning when we're teaching kids how to cross the street, right? uh Look both ways. Are there cars coming? Like we don't think that those are like practical skills, right? What if you never ever taught your kids how to tie your shoelaces? Right. Right, like now those kind of things seem to come naturally, but I just want us to see like everything your kid knows how to do, they've learned from somewhere. Like for our young dads, right? Trying to potty train a 2-year-old boy, like that's a challenge. You don't ever think that you got to like teach somebody how to poop and where to go, but that's a life skill, right? And so passing on your skills as a dad is really important. And it's not just like hard skills like, can you use a chop saw? Can you run a screw gun? Do you know how to paint? Can you change the oil in the car? Right? It's not just practical things, because all those kind of things in generations before were passed on because kids grew up shoulder to shoulder with their dads. Exactly right. So we have to be intentional. What you know how to do, you have to pass that on to your kids. And that's really important because you'll discover that there are things that you don't know how to do, that you have to be intentional about inviting other people into your family's life, into your children's life, to give them those skills that you're lacking. Right. So we had to build I don't often quote Hillary Clinton, but when she referenced the idea that it takes a village to raise a child, it really does. Right. And so it's not just practical skills, but it's also what we call, they don't need just experiential intelligence. In the last 5, 10 years, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence. So when you teach a kid how to say please and thank you, right? How to look somebody in the eye and how to shake. Uh, Studies will show that 80% of an individual's success is based off soft skills, relational skills. And when we're teaching them how to say please and thank you, to share, to let others go first, to do, like, we're giving them the skills that they need to be intent. We just have to be intentional about it. I had a great story from a dad who went through Dad Academy. Super great guy. And but he was struggling with this part of his dad plan. Like, my son's 8. What do I teach him how to do? I have no like construction experience. I have none of these other like kind of like dad skills. I've already taken him out golfing. You know what? So he went and asked his 8-year-old son. And he said, "What do you wish you knew how to do that you don't?" He goes, "Dad, I want to open a bank account." Boom, light turns on. Right? Dad got out. Dad just pulled out $200. Said, you're gonna do little things around the house to earn this money, and then with this money we're gonna go open a bank account. Then he started teaching him about like finances and savings and budgeting at 8 years old. Right? That's a skill that I wish anybody would have taught me, because at my age today I'm still struggling with that. Right? And now he sent me an email. Now they started to like take some of that money and invest it. Like, it's a at, so when you start to be intentional on both of these skills, and the thing is that, as well, like there are skills that you teach your 3-year-old. We don't think about it, but there really are. Right? Don't throw your food. Go wash your 5 years old. Teach them how to make the bed. Uh, Take on responsibilities, and then and that's why your dad plan has to develop. You don't just have one plan. You reevaluate it every year, just like you would your business. Exactly right. Except for what we organize for them. Conflict resolution, right? Conflict resolution, cooperation, communication, for sure, right? And like, I don't want to get too much into this, but like the crisis that we're sensing with um, generations struggling with understanding who they are is because they're left too much to themselves. And anytime we're just ruminating all the time on trying to answer questions and you're the only one who can answer them, right? No wonder we have a bunch of confusion. That's your mirror. That's your fake mirror, right? It's a whole different. I mean, what was learned from pickup basketball games on the play yard and sharing swings and yeah. And so that places even more of a responsibility on dad not to pay other people to raise your kids. Now, culture is norms, like what's accepted, what's measured, what behaviors and things that we do. So like part of our, there's a famous book that was written by a what Navy admiral, his bestseller a year or two ago, called "Make Your Bed." Right? It was just about like you start out with simple victories, right? Well, the norm in our culture was everybody contributes. And the way that you contribute the day you start going to school, the day you start making your bed. Now, my expectation of them from a 5-year-old to a 15-year-old is different, right? Of what the performance level was, but it's still the part that you do. Our family culture is that everybody contributes. So we didn't pay allowances, right? Because mom doesn't get an allowance for doing laundry, right? So those were some of those things are bid into our culture. And then the next level was that we prioritized in serving. So whenever we saw an opportunity, so culture has to do with norms, culture has to do with language, right? What kind of language are you using? Well, what's the tone? What's acceptable? How do we navigate conversation and the forms of communication? But there are also things that really define your culture is what we call the rituals and traditions. And it's really a biblically based concept for any of the dads on there that may not have a big background in this. But this thing that we call Christianity, or the way that God first came and developed a people, was he chose this dude named Abraham and said, "Go to a land that I'll show you." And the guy just started going, right? And so there's no like cultural DNA in this process, but how he defined how this became a people was through the rituals and traditions that defined and reminded them who they are. And so as a family, the rituals and traditions that you have and the decisions that you make are really, 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 really important. So like for us, some families like, did you open Christmas presents on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning? Right? Those are like memories start getting associated to those kinds of things. What happened around the Thanksgiving tables? How were birthdays celebrated? All of those kind of traditions are part of your family culture. And then the rituals, right? The rituals. We make our bed. Dad comes in every night before we go to bed. We have dinner at the dinner table once a week. Like those types of routines are really, 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 really important. And because the culture is the thing that gives kids confidence, because those types of experiences define for them who they are. And this is what's important. And this is what's valued. And so the family culture is really, really important. If I could jump onto that, part of that is also vacations. I really say that part of culture is memory making, right? All these traditions, all these rituals create a bank, a resource bank of memories. And the best way to do that, part of a Dad Academy dad plan for a guy, is you have to plan a vacation. Because when you push everything back, then you create this wonderful breathing space for memories to be made, for laughs to be had, for right. Because when you look back on your life, the thing that you will remember about your family is maybe the same meal that you had seemingly every single week, and so hated this, or remember when we went on this trip and you did this. Like, those are the stories that get told throughout the years that remind you and connect you to your identity. Bro, my first vacation that I ever took my kids on, I was a brand new pastor, church, planting a church, no money, right? My wife, I went and did a couple side hustles because somebody gave us tickets to SeaWorld, a 2-day pass to SeaWorld, and I got a 1 night, a 2 night stay at some little Homewood Suites. I think we spent a total of $200 on that, and then for us, that was like everything then. And right, that's when I really learned how important these kinds of things were. Most of our vacations, what's so funny, my wife hates to camp, uh, but my kids love the outdoors. And so here where we live, there literally is like a state park that's wilderness that's about 10 miles from our house. So when the kids were little, I would pack up the tent. I would pack up everything, right? And we'd go and we'd set up camp and everything like that. And then at nighttime, after we've had our fun camping, my wife Jamie would drive over. We'd have hot dogs over the fires and s'mores. And she'd enjoy all that with us. And then she'd go home. And I'd have the kids. She'd sleep in her bed. And and then the next morning, what was so funny was the next morning I would get up uh, because it was 10 miles from our house, but it was only like 3 miles from the nearest Starbucks. And I would put the kids in the car. I'd go get coffee. Then we'd come back and we'd make like campfire breakfast, right? We do that for 3 days. It cost me, what? It's more the time and the memories. Your kids don't, man. How many of us have we given our kids a gift when they're little? They spend more time playing with a box than they actually did what was inside of it. Time, time is important because even when you go to all of these great places, rarely do they go like, wow, the Eiffel Tower was amazing. I can't believe they never say that. They're like, remember when you had that icy in front of the Eiffel Tower and you like it came out your nose because we made you laugh? The Eiffel Tower is like a side piece. That could happen at the fair, but it doesn't happen unless you create the space and the time. Bro, you need the break. Dads, we need the break. When do you get that much time with your family? And for all the dads out there, I just want to tell you, a weekend at club sports is not a vacation. Exactly right. And don't tell yourself that is sufficient, right? If that's what your family wants to do, you do it. But you have to do something other that shows them that they are a priority. For sure. Um, it's something I still struggle with my adult son. Now, my adult son is 6'4". He's a beast of a surfer and rock climber and mountain climber. Um, thankfully for him, but not a competitive bone in his body. Um, uh, is all about people. Has a very tender heart. My son is my mom. Is his mom. Unfortunately, my daughter tends to take a little bit more personality wise after me. Um, and I remember, I'm used to trying to control teenagers who are running around at camps, and I and I'm a good size guy, and so I know how to get cop, right? Like firm, direct, right? Guys understand that kind of coachy, you know. And I remember having like my son was probably 3 or 4 and wasn't obeying, and so I put on the voice and I got direct with my 3 year old, and I saw him in that moment wither. And from that point forward, even to this day, if I have any kind of anything that's leading up to a confrontation that happens with my 28-year-old son, I still see that 3 year old. I have to be careful about how um, because what I found. Let me. This is a little bit more of a personal story for all of our listeners. Never get a preacher on the podcast, but 2020, good. 2020, I'll try to do this without crying, actually. 2020, I was sitting at home, had the computer on, and I'm doing some work, and my daughter and my wife were in the kitchen, and um, uh, my wife was like, tonight we should roast some broccoli for dinner. And I'm just hearing this. The TV's on. It's just one of those. That's kind of the female side of me. I can I can multitask really well, and yeah. And and my wife was like, "Nah, your dad doesn't like broccoli. That's not gonna." And which is true. Like, that's not a story. I grew up farming in Central California, and when I had to make extra money, I'd go work on our friend's farm, and the number one produce that they had was broccoli, and we had free broccoli as pastors, and had it every single way with Cheerios and cheese sauce and whatever, right? See, when I became an adult, I'm never eating broccoli again. No big deal, right? The next day, my wife is having a conversation with my daughter. I don't even know what they're talking about. And Sissy says, "Yeah, that's not dad's kind of thing." I don't know what even they were talking about, but I remembered hearing that. And the next day, another conversation between the two of them. And the final thing was my wife saying to my daughter, "No, that's not something that your dad wants to do." And in that moment, I heard an echo in my own soul that said, "Dad wins." That's the value of the Hamilton home, that everybody revolves their life around what they think is acceptable to dad. And I began to weep. because I'm supposed to be giving my life away. I'm supposed to be serving. And yet, my whole family culture was revolved around what I wanted and what I liked. That was a big revelation for me because that means I had been shaping that at that time for 24 years. And I have committed to see if I can reverse that. And I think here's the I would tell all the dads out there, the day you really become a man is the day you can look in the mirror and say, life's not about me. I've not had broccoli in 25 years. I do try it like once a year because I know it's supposed to be good for me. But like, bro, I can smell it when she brings it in from the grocery store. Just because I don't know if you had things like that when you were a kid, that you just had it so much. Oh, yeah. Oh, bro. Now, the one thing I'm not allergic to, if any of the listeners, I do love to eat ribeye. I'm not allergic to those. And so if anybody, wants to make up for my broccoli, and, I want to see your bracelet, the word for this year that you have. See, I listen to what's going on, man. I love this idea, Scott. Mm. Because that's such a crucial thing because like kids don't feel like they can be empowered to change unless they see it happen with dad. That goes back to one of the Dad Academy principles, the three things that dads give kids, right? We've talked about confidence that comes from culture. We've talked about competence that comes from understanding your life skills, but courage comes from living from the heart, right? Knowing how to lead a life that comes from the heart. And the biggest thing that needs to happen in our lives is a willingness to change and to grow. And the people who know us best, those are the ones that we're often most resistant. Like, why are we resistant to the changes that our wife points out to us? Like, they're the ones who are most invested, right? Bro, you don't even know. Like, you don't, right? And so to have what an amazing place, the culture that you've created, that one of the norms in our family is that we can speak, the Bible calls it speak the truth in love to one another. And that your son had the courage, was willing to take the risk of rejection from his dad, but he saw his dad train him that this is acceptable. He saw his dad receive it, apply it, and grow through it. What do you think that teaches him or trains him for the future? I can do this too. Bro, that's a powerful, powerful moment. Oh, for me, it would be the opposite, man. My son would kind of tease me a little bit, but my daughter, she'd go, let me open the notes file on my phone, Dad, and I'll yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, sir. Well, I we start out with it, right? Keep the end in mind, right? The goal is not to be friends with my children. The goal is to be friends with my adult children, right? I want to spend the rest of my life serving them and resourcing them, which means that the most important job I have up until 18 is to be a dad, right? I create boundaries for them. I create opportunities for them to succeed. But I can't be concerned on whether or not they like me in the immediate moment. Um, I need to keep the long view in mind. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Oh, you'll figure it out. Like yeah, what kind of help is that? Right? Uh and and I think it comes in general just because we just really don't think intentionally about being a dad. So when you go to a dad that you admire and they'll be like, "Oh, you'll figure it out." And you kind of do, but is that the best that we can do? Come on. Number 1, number 1, have a plan. Have a dad plan. Okay? Like that's the whole reason behind Dad Academy. But in my own personal journey, as well, I mean, we'll get around to this. I've invested my whole adult life into leadership and management, and we are talking earlier about. I don't know that there's anybody that's been more Maxwellized in life than I have. As you've John Maxwell has been a mentor from afar for me. But I will tell you what, none of that matters if you're not healthy in your soul. Proverbs says, guard your heart, for out of it flow the issues of life. And the reason why I believe in Dads on Tap, the reason why I believe in Dad Academy is because the secret sauce of all these things is not the instruction that you get, but the community that you build. And so if hurt people, healed people heal people. And what I want is a healed and healthy family. It's not that I'm not going to be able to that I won't do some damage, right? But it's not going to be it's not going to be irreparable. And so I think every man needs to give some attention to his own soul, which if I drop down to you preloaded me with some of the questions. Soul Keeping is a book that I just read by John Ortberg. I like some stuff that helps us think internally. It's crucial. I don't want to sidetrack us too much, Scott, but in Orange County, the number 2 killer of men over the age of 40, next to heart disease, is suicide. Right? Because they've disconnected from their purpose, they don't have a mission, and they found that all of the things that they've pursued in life that they think would bring them a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment and significance doesn't. Right? I hate to say it, but we've got to be better at becoming good human beings, not human doings. Oh, let's go. Yeah. Yes. And we um I had a mentor of mine that give me something that for the last 20 years has shaped my my last decade has shaped kind of my perspective, is that we live in a culture where your worth and value is based on what you produced. We live in the term we use is a perform for love culture, right? And especially as men, we always gravitate towards where we're affirmed, right? You may not, a paycheck is an affirmation of your value, right? And that's why we got guys that invest so much time into their hobbies. Oh, look at my boat. I've got the biggest boat on the lake. Look at the rims on my car. You know, look at my 87 pickleball paddles that I have, right? And somebody's going to go like, oh, that's cool, right? And we have worth and value from that. Because we just gravitate as men towards those places where we're affirmed. Um, I think the thing that would change our culture, our nation, and the world is if men could learn not to perform for love, but to perform from love. I got one more book though when we get down to that spot. Oh, it's an older. Now I do have 5 books that I read every single year, and I've been doing it for 30 years. I do read Seven Habits. I usually review it. There's a book called Pursuit of Holiness by Jerry Bridges that I read. I read a book called Victory Over the Darkness by Neil Anderson. That is again another soul care kind of book. Um, I, uh, and then most recently, when it comes to like leadership and teams and things like this, I still, one of my go-to mentoring books that I have leaders read with me is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, because it talks about the 4 types of people that are involved in an organization. And staying on the Gladwell trail, I I love David and Goliath and Outliers because it talks about how thinking outside the box uh, deliver some breakthroughs. I mean, you can see if we were to show the camera. I mean, this whole I got 5 bookshelves behind me that are filled with books that every single one I've probably read multiple times. Um, but those are the most helpful. But if I was to just give any dad kind of encouragement, hardest thing you'll ever do and the greatest accomplishment you'll ever have in your life is to read the Bible cover to cover one time. And because all these books back here, right, all this stuff, all those principles are found in there. And yeah, so that's good. Thanks, man. Yes, sir. I know it sounds weak and stupid, but to be with them, and I just love being with my. I don't care what I'm doing as long as I'm with them. I mean, really doesn't matter anymore because I like even looking back, the things that I would remember about them growing up and their stages of life, and we've had a lot of cool experiences. The things that would remember are not necessarily things that they would remember. But I love the fact that my wife and I have invested our lives in such a way that our kids still want to be with us. I mean, what better end is there than that, right? Like they got choices. They don't have to do it. And we don't get together all the time, right? We're living cross country, it's 6 hours, 7 hours up to Santa Cruz for me. But FaceTime for me has been a game changer. Um, and just being able to see their face and encourage them, uh, man, that's what I want to. I want to encourage my family and even extended my nieces and nephews. I want them; they're all adults too, and I call my nieces and nephews at least every month. Not because I'm a great uncle, but I just want them to know that they have a resource and somebody who's a fan of theirs, and they're my brothers and sisters. Like they tell me, like we can't believe you do that because they talk about it, and that's a cool thing. Simplest place to start with some basic information is dadacademy.info. Dadacademy.info, right? Information on Dad Academy. And then we're pretty semi active on our social media, right? Instagram is dad.academy, dad.academy. And then TikTok. I'm of that since I'm with high school kids all the time. Like I'm a TikTok kind of guy, and so TikTok is Dad Academy. YouTube is Dad Academy. But we got some great resources on the Dad Academy website. There's a quick little download, 3 Responsibilities of a Father. That's a really helpful checklist for you to think through about what really a dad's supposed to be doing. You can grab that off of the website. We have ongoing cohorts that guys can join. In fact, Scott, offline, maybe you and I can talk about even a discount that we could offer to any of the dads on tap. 50% off. Where else can you change the destiny of your family for less than it costs to eat at Applebee's? Right? Great investment. Great investment. The only reason why we charge is because guys won't give any effort to what they haven't invested in. And so, but yeah, we want a resource, and just I'd ask you to partner and encourage with me. Like I want to see in the next 2 years, 10,000 dads be resourced in some way and connected to community. And hopefully Dad Academy will be a part of that.